Welcome. This is Breakfast Extra, and today let me start by stating the name of our monologue this morning. It is BDAPC. It's not a rearrangement of the alphabets, it's actually what it is. Be the APC. Good morning. Now, before we begin, let me say this clearly. This is not an endorsement, it is not an alignment, it is not conversion. It's an observation. Simple political observation, because sometimes to understand where we're going, you have to first of all be honest about what is already working, whether you like it or not. So there's something almost admirable about a party that understands one thing clearly. Power is not an accident. It's organized. While others are still debating ideology, issuing statements, and also discovering microphones, the APC is in Abuja today doing what it does best. It's national, convention. It's structuring itself. It's positioning itself. It's preparing itself. Because elections in Nigeria are not won on Twitter. They are not won in press conferences. They are not won in outrage. They are won in rooms, in quiet rooms, with lists, with numbers. I mean, with agreements that never make it to the public, but that shape everything that follows, whether you like it or not. And right now, the APC is in those rooms. These conversations, well, it's just not about titles. It might be about the national chairman, the secretary, publicity secretary, all those positions, but they're not just offices, they're levers, quiet instruments of control. They decide who speaks, who runs, who gets the ticket, and who is politely told to wait for another cycle. Emile Khan. In simple terms, this is where the party decides its future, and possibly the country's. Now again, let me be clear, this is not praise. It's pattern recognition. It's looking at the board and admitting who is actually playing the game with structure. You may not like the APC. I mean, many Nigerians do not. You may question its record. Many already do. But here is the truth. It is the only party at the moment that behaves like it intends to win. I mean, look around. The opposition is still trying to agree on what it is and what it isn't. One side is strong online, another side is strong in pockets, another side is strong in memory. But politics is not about isolated strengths. It is about coordinated force, alignment, discipline. And that is where the gap is, because the APC understands structure, it understands loyalty, it understands that politics is not just about popularity, it is about presence. Who is in the ward? Who controls the state? Who shows up when it matters? And who can move from conversation to action without losing momentum? So while others are negotiating alliances in theory, the APC is negotiating power in practice. And let's talk about defections now. I know it's been a big topic all year round, but in Nigeria, defection is not betrayal, it is data. It tells you where politicians believe the system is most functional, whether for their pockets or not. People move where they think their ambition have a pathway. And right now, many of them took to the APC. They see it as a machine. It might be imperfect, but it's still functioning to them. So they joined. Of course, that comes with its own problems. Too many interests, too many ambitions. Old members looking at new members with bombastic side eye. Everyone is smiling, but they're counting. Calculated, quiet calculations behind public unity. But even that chaos is still organized chaos. Because at the end of the day, they sit, they negotiate, and they agree, not always happily, not always cleanly, but effectively. And in politics, effectiveness often beats perfection. And that's the difference. And once again, so it's not misunderstood. Let me say this for the people in the back. This is not me taking sides. This is me stating the science of structure, the mechanics of power as it is being practiced currently. Because the real question is not whether the APC is perfect. It's not. The real question is whether any other party is ready. Ready to build structure beyond slogans, ready to manage ambition without collapsing, ready to create systems that outlive individuals, ready to move beyond speeches and become something that can compete consistently. Because elections are coming. Might not be today, not tomorrow, but soon enough, all the preparations by all the parties should already be visible. It should be measurable and undeniable. And right now, only one party seems to be preparing. The others are still talking. Maybe it's time they take notes, not to copy every single thing, but to lose, or rather not to also lose their identity, but to understand something simple. In politics, intention is not enough. Organization wins. Structure sustains, discipline delivers. And whether we like it or not, the APC understands that better than anyone else in the room right now. So, to close, one more time, remember, it's not an endorsement, it's not support, it's just simple observation. Because sometimes the most honest analysis are the ones that say what is working, even if you don't agree with it. And perhaps in that honesty, there is something others can take away from this, something they can learn. And I mean all the other political parties. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Breakfast Extra. My name is Mazino Appeal. Of course, today I am being joined by none other than Queen Celestine, who is back. Queen, where did you go?
I had to go somewhere on assignment, but I'm back now.
Well, I thought you'd say you've been to London to see the King, because that's where the president was only just last week. You missed all of it. It was plenty of debate and talk about exactly what he went to do and the relevance of it and whether we're having new...
Maybe if I was part of this entourage, it would have been there, but I'm not. But yeah.
There was plenty of them, a whole lot of them. In fact, Nigeria was empty. In any case, let me come over back there and let's start the show, shall we? Welcome once again to Breakfast Extra.
Good morning and welcome to Breakfast Extra. And yes, I'm back. And we begin with a question of inclusion. Across Nigeria, millions living with disabilities still struggle with access and opportunity despite existing laws. We take you to a News Central town hall where stakeholders confront the gap between policy and reality and ask what real accountability should look like. We then turn to politics and the road to 2027. A meeting between Peter Obi and Rabiu Kwankwaso is stirring fresh speculation about a possible alliance. Is this the start of a credible opposition front or just another movement of political signaling? We break it down here. From there, we head to Benue State, where rising cases of femicide are raising urgent concerns. Beyond the headlines, we examine the patterns, the silence, and the systemic gaps that continue to put lives at risk and what must change. And we also look at women in leadership. Progress is visible, but the deeper question remains. Are women truly empowered in the spaces they occupy, or are structural barriers still holding them back? We explore what meaningful inclusion in leadership really means. And on the global stage, attention shifts to the Middle East, where a proposed ceasefire is testing the limits of diplomacy. We'll bring in the African perspective, examining how distant conflicts continue to shape economies and decisions closer to home. And finally, a historic moment at the United Nations. Ghana leads a resolution declaring the transatlantic slave trade one of humanity's gravest crimes. We ask what justice looks like beyond recognition and whether this could move the conversation on reparations forward. All of that and more as breakfast begins now. Stay with us. Hey, Mazino.
Hey, Queen. Hi, how are you? Where have you been? Let's talk about this. I don't know if wherever it was that you were, if you noticed the fuel price hike and everything. Of course, it's all our problems.
I did.
Across the entire world. Do you have a position on anything regarding Iran?
I think that's part of my monologue tomorrow, and it's like I said, it's something that a lot of people are wondering what concern us, but it does concern us. It's a ripple effect. It's a domino effect, and it's funny how you're in one part of the world and you just feel like, hey, what's happening there is happening there. Now it's hitting us. Diesel is 1.8.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I didn't know that before because I have no need for diesel. I'm a poor man, better past my neighbor.
Look at you.
Not very interesting. No, we get to talk about that today inside of Focus Africa.
Yes. What
the implications are for Africa as the Middle East war, let's call it what it is, which is slowly creeping into being World War III, but not yet. But just wait until the other nations decide whether to join or not. But let's go on a quick break. When we get back, we'll be starting off with our first few conversations inside the first hour for Breakfast Extra. Do stay tuned. You're welcome. Welcome back. Now, let's start off with our very first big story. Across Nigeria, millions live with disabilities. Yet for many, access, dignity, and opportunity remain out of reach. Policies exist, promises have been made, but the question is simple. Are we building a society that truly includes everyone, or one that still looks away? At a recent News Central town hall, stakeholders, advocates, and also persons living with disabilities came together to confront the question head-on. Our correspondent followed the conversation, the concerns, and also the lived realities. And we have this very interesting, well, let's call it material for you to see. Let's take a look. And when we get back, we'll be speaking with our News Central correspondent, Bernard Akede, who actually hosted the event. In fact, I'm being told that we're going straight to Bernard. Bernard, good morning. Thank you very much for joining Breakfast Extra this morning. Good to have you always.
Good morning, Bernard.
Welcome back.
Good morning,
from
Mazino.
Asaba.
And good morning, Queen.
First of all, Bernard, let's get your opinion. What was it like in Asaba? Did you like it? Was it peaceful? Was it, what was it like? Funny enough, I was there at almost the same time. At least I passed through. But tell me what your experience was like in Delta State.
Well, the experience was good. Unfortunately, like you may know, we usually don't have so much time to experience the town. But, the little time we had, at least we tasted some really nice delicacies from Delta State. So that was good. The people were warm and friendly. And I think they're into the hospitality business right there in Asaba, which is one thing that was quite prominent. We don't get to see traffic like you would have in Lagos more often than not. And then, they do more of kekes than bikes. A bit of culture change, culture shift, basically, or culture shock, if you like to put it that way. But generally, Asaba is a cool town. You want to relax, you want to get out of the hustle and bustle of Lagos. It's one place I'll recommend.
Sorry about all the Benz GLKs all over the place, but
Look,
it's a nuisance and a menace, but you get to love it still. Anyhow, let's talk about the town hall for persons living with disabilities. Now, the big question that most people would ask would be, why exactly was Asaba the main place? Why was it the venue chosen to have this town hall? Do they have peculiar challenges there? Isn't it a nationwide challenge? Do tell.
Right, yes, it definitely is a nationwide challenge, and thank you for that amazing question. It is a nationwide challenge, and we did get to find out that even though disability is universal, there are peculiarities as to how people are treated when it comes to their disabilities and the responses from their various governments when it comes to disabilities and the needs, unfortunately, the needs of the people. You would agree with me that if we go to the core north, the needs of persons with disabilities there may just differ from what you have down in Lagos. It will also differ from what you have in Abuja, North Central, and from what you have in Asaba, like where we went to. So it's something that we intend to take around the various geopolitical zones of the country eventually. But Asaba was just picked as a starting point. Also, we had the Asagba of Asaba, the traditional paramount ruler, a traditional ruler in that area, who himself is a scholar, professor, and was quite interested to have it in his kingdom. So there wasn't any particular reason for taking it down there, so to speak. It was just the starting point for us, the focal starting point for us, and we do intend to take it round, as I mentioned, the 6 geopolitical zones. When we do have that, if we eventually are able to achieve all of that, just as you hinted, you'll get to see that, again, as I mentioned, though it's a universal challenge, there are peculiarities when it comes to how persons with disabilities are treated, to what they need, what they want, and how they are being, perceived. Unfortunately, I don't think it should be so, but, such is the issue we find ourselves in.
Bernard, good to see you. I just wanted to ask, what is the specific institution or sector that the people living with disabilities are saying that they have more exclusion, and where is it more visible?
Of course, I think it's in government and governance. And I give this analogy, it's like having the Ministry of Women Affairs. Then you have 80% of members of that ministry are men. And in some cases, even the heads of the ministry are men. It's the same way you have persons with disabilities. Some states you create a commission for persons with disabilities, but a lot of people who work in that commission are not persons with disabilities. And this is not to say that we do not have intellectuals, we do not have professionals, we do not have expertise from persons with disabilities. I mean, yesterday we got to see that we have lawyers, we have engineers, we even got to know that there's an arm of the Nigerian police that caters for persons with disabilities. It's possible that some of those, the staff in that particular arm, persons with disabilities. So I think largely their complaint was inclusion, or the lack of it rather, in terms of getting employment. We had examples, we had instances of people talking about them applying for jobs, doing fantastically well in their applications and in their interviews. But the moment the employers or employers to be got to see them physically and saw that these people had physical challenges, first of all, the change started from the expression on the faces of the so-to-be employers. And then eventually, many of them never got those jobs, regardless of how skilled, how talented they are or they were. Even in education, we got to see that there were, they equally have challenges when it comes to education. Persons with disabilities not having the opportunities or the chance, to go to certain schools for education. Some people complaining about how even the schools that they went to, the structure, the infrastructure, they did not support persons with disabilities. So again, to answer your question, largely the major point of their argument was inclusion, in the society, in government, and then not just. I'm trying to remember how a gentleman particularly put it. He said, I'll try to explain it, right? It says you create, that there's some establishments that would already create what they want and then create a space for persons with disabilities and ask them to come and fill this space. And that's not inclusion. Inclusion is in the creation. There is availability for persons with disabilities to join that creation, to be a part of that movement, to be a part of the change. And these people make up almost 20% of the entire population of the country, if not more, based on the analysis that was given out yesterday. So you can imagine what that particular number will do and can do for the nation.
Okay. Bernard, it's very interesting to see the particular challenges that these people are going through. But in the midst of everybody there, I couldn't help but notice a number of people living with albinism. And of course, Mr. Jacob Pele was there championing the entire process there for people living with disability, but he himself living with albinism. What peculiar challenges could these people have that, because most people would understand that they are like regular. So what challenges do they face specifically?
All right, I'm really elated that you asked this question. And so on Wednesday, the night before the town, on the 9 p.m. bulletin, we had a small, round table gathering where certain people sat. And I interviewed them like 10 minutes in the 9 p.m. bulletin. And one of the ladies there with albinism said that one of her own challenge is the fact that even persons within the disability community do not accept persons with albinism as being disabled. Now, here are some of the challenges I got to find out. First of all, we already know that their skin lacks melanin, which means that they cannot be exposed to major ultraviolet rays of the sun like you and I can be exposed to. They can't stand it. Even their eyes too lack melanin. So you see a person who is with albinism, and largely to access their phone, they literally have to pull it this close sometimes, But largely it's the issue of the skin. While we're there, there's also Tolani Ojuri, who's one of us at News Central, at least for a while. And he's he's the head of persons with albinism, or the chairperson, persons with albinism in Lagos State. And they've been able to get grants from the government for surgeries. A good number of them suffer from skin cancer, which is a major challenge. So basically it puts them out of the ability to do certain things, walking around in the sun, some kind of heavy manual labor that you and I would probably be able to do, exposure to things like skin cancer, as I mentioned, challenges with sight, as I equally mentioned initially, and the fact that these things disqualify them from several opportunities that they may have, they should have been able to, to access or to gain. So it's, again, bringing this into perspective is the fact that what exactly constitutes disability varies as well. And it's a challenge that, not many people know certain things certain things that will constitute disability. So largely, to wrap this question up that you're asking, Mazino, is I said yesterday that I think the conversation borders on three focal points. One is awareness, very key. Not many people know what disability is or what it should be and how people with disabilities should be treated. The second one is inclusion, and then the third one is, putting infrastructure in place for persons with disabilities to access various places.
Well, thank you so much, Bernard. Being our lead reporter, it's so fascinating how you get to break down these situations and having, being in this room and having conversations with these people. It's just amazing. Thank you for joining us this morning. And now we're going to watch the reports that you made. Thank you, Bernard.
Thank you, Bernard.
Thank you for having me.
Persons with disabilities, advocacy groups, stakeholders, and policymakers met in this hall for the News Central Town Hall series in Asaba, Delta State capital.
So inclusion drives innovation, inclusion expands market, inclusion strengthens society.
This is the first edition of the year, and it's in collaboration with Staff Africa with the theme From Sympathy to Solutions, driving real change for persons with disabilities in Nigeria.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if there's one thing that this town hall meeting must achieve, is that at the end of this wonderful initiative by Kayode and his team, that Delta State government will come up and say, by Monday, there'll be a new law that have corrected 1% to 5%.
Emotion filled the hall as members of the PWD community shared their personal experiences, such as missed job opportunities, inaccessible public buildings, unfriendly transport systems, among other bottlenecks.
I was going to school from Obiaroku to Abraka every day on bike. And not only the stress of moving that distance, but when you get there, you see that you find it difficult to even access your classrooms because they were not disability friendly. Most times before I get there, everywhere is filled up. Sometimes I sit outside till lecture will finish. I will still go back home.
You have a money to pay for house rent. You cannot see a house rent that is accessible for persons with disability, both the toilet and the rest of it.
Experts, stakeholders, including government representatives, identify a troubling gap between policy and practice. They acknowledged the lack of political will to implement the existing disability laws.
We must continue to challenge people. It is not only government, private corporations, individuals, collectively and otherwise, members of the community, society. We must continue to lead advocacy so that they can understand that there are certain things that must be done in order to accommodate the interests of the disabled amongst us.
Thank you so much.
The managing director and editor-in-chief of News Central TV, Kayode Akintemi, reiterated the core mandates of the station to amplify the voices of the underprivileged in the society.
Because you must be heard, you must be listened to, and something must happen for people living with disabilities in Nigeria. News Central will give you all the support in your effort to engage them and to make them accountable at the end of the election when they assume office.
The event climaxed with the distribution of relief materials to some persons living with disabilities, symbolizing solidarity and shared commitment.
Participants at this town hall are happy and grateful to News Central for this opportunity to be heard. They now look forward to government's reactions and implementations of these recommendations reached at this event. In Delta for News Central, Austin Azu.
Well, there you have it by our correspondent Austin Azu, having the News Central Town Hall with people with living with disabilities. Now we're going to break. When we return, Breakfast Extra continues. Stay with us. Welcome back to Breakfast Extra, and this is our first big story. Now, as Nigeria edges closer to the 2027 general elections, early signals of political realignment are beginning to take shape. A recent meeting between Peter Obi and Rabiu in Kano has stirred fresh speculation about a possible alliance. Both men remain influential figures with strong regional bases, and any partnership between them could significantly reshape the opposition landscape. At the heart of the conversation is a familiar question in Nigerian politics. Can fragmented opposition forces find common ground strong enough to challenge entrenched power structures? Past attempts at coalition building have often faltered under the weight of personal ambition, ideological differences, and regional calculations. Yet the urgency of economic pressures and public dissatisfaction may be creating new incentives for cooperation.
So to help us unpack the implications, we are joined by Simeon Nna. That's Professor Simeon Nna, Public Affairs Analyst. He'll be joining us via Zoom. Professor, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Always a pleasure to have you here on the show. So, the tongues have been wagging since last week. Everybody talking about this meeting between Obi and Kwankwaso. And I'm wondering, what exactly is the relevance or the implication or symbolism of such a meet?
Well, it's symbolic, it has implications, and we are looking forward to seeing what it will pan out to be. Well, if you have been following the political history, you will discover that sometimes in November, December last year, President Obasanjo, popularly known as OBJ, tried to mediate between Obi and Kwankwaso. And just like what happened in 2023, Kwankwaso was still saying that he's a senior politician. He has been a two-time governor. He has been a minister of defense. He has been a deputy speaker and stuff like that. That he's more experienced than Peter Obi. However, with the courts aligning with the other faction of NNPP, it became paramount that the Kwankwaso should look for a safe bet. And I think that is what is happening now. That's why you saw that meeting during the Salah period. Anybody telling you that it was a normal Salah visit is being economical with the truth. It was a political visit. However, there are other dimensions to it. And I usually tell people that 24 hours is a long time in politics. Now, you saw a Siriakadis in there. You saw a Makinde there. So these are people that have come together for a purpose. Now, the question that people are asking is, Makinde is still in PDP fighting. Siriaka Dixon have left PDP for NDC. So why are they gathering together? Now, my thinking is that the NDC may be a spare tire. They are just keeping it because if you look at the permutation in ADC now, the South-South members of ADC are backing Rotimi Amechi. Atiku seems to have enough backing him. However, that's why Obasanjo came.
I was saying, Professor Nna.
Professor Nna, are you there? Professor Nna, we seem to have lost you. Hopefully you can hear us. We will try to regain connection with you. Are you back, sir? Yes, you are.
Okay.
Please continue.
I'm back.
Continue.
Okay. So I was trying to say, I don't know where you lost me, but I was trying to say that in November, December last year, Obasanjo packaged a truce between Kwankwaso and Obi. which did not see the light of day because Kwankwaso was still grandstanding just like he did in 2023. However, with a judgment that did not favor his faction of NNPP, he is now trying to consider that move of Obi-Kwankwaso ticket. That was why you saw that meeting that day.
Right.
Now, the other question is, there was a Makinde there that is PDP still fighting. They have not left the PDP. There is the Siriaka district that have left PDP for NDC. So what are they coming together to do? Since all of them are from different political parties. The thinking is that, one, they are using NDC as a platform. However, in the NDC, there are divisions. The Anechi ticket is being backed by the South-South. The Atiku ticket, the North is solidly behind him. That's where Obasanjo came in. Obasanjo has been meeting the leaders of the North to see whether they can back a younger candidate and back Peter Obi. You know, and that's why the Peter Obi-Kwankwaso ticket is on the pipeline. If Atiku agrees, or if the North agrees for a Peter Obi-Kwankwaso ticket, then it means that Atiku will have to support them.
Yeah, Professor,
it means that
it's a very interesting, it's a very interesting pattern which you have created for us, especially taking it back from history with the Obasanjo inclusion there. But Queen, you were going to ask?
Yes, you know, he mentioned about, you know, the people from PDP and the NDC being in the room at this meeting. And of course, we've always seen over time that most times it's not about the parties. Most times the politicians are friends behind the scenes. But what I want to ask is, what do you think each figure stand to gain or lose if this alliance actually, you know, go on?
No, they stand to gain because if the alliance succeeds, then there will be a viable opposition, a serious, viable opposition. And the APC knows that. That's why they are fighting that the ADC should not stand. That's why you see them, you know, in and out of court to ensure that the ADC, forget what they are saying, that Kachukwu or whatever, who was the former chairman of ADC, said that he was not consulted, that David Mark just came up and said he was the chairman of the party, and that's why he went to court. Now, if you trace the trajectory of that, you will know that the Kachukwu man was being economical with the truth, because initially he seemed to have bought the dummy, but somewhere along the line, my usual, trajectory that the hand of Esau, and the voice of Jacob came into the fray. And before you know it, he started speaking in tongues and went to court that he was still the chairman of the party. So you see, the APC is fighting frantically to ensure that the ADC does not stand. So that's why, in my own thinking, I believe that's why the Siriaka Disin angle came in. So they are looking at that as a spare tire. If East does not work, Wars will work. So if they try ADC and with the courts matter here and there, ADC is not allowed to fly their flag, then they might think of NDC that has no encumbrances as we speak now. And my understanding too is that the former president Jonathan is backing the NDC. So we are just watching events because this is just the beginning. The things will play out.
Exactly that, Professor Na. Exactly that, Professor Na. This is just the beginning, and the beginning so close to 2027 is something that should worry anybody who is not prepared for the elections. The APC is having its national convention today. That seems like a party that has everything all structured. Let's talk about the structure and how it applies, the implications here for Peter Obi and Kwankwaso. Peter Obi leads or led the LP. At least his ideology led the LP, and that has a youth orientation, like reform focus, while Kwankwaso has a very good-rooted northern grassroots support. But how do these maths come well to actually help the party? Many would say it consolidates the votes. But then the ideologies might still be different. But I wanted to ask you, in your opinion, what specific challenges you think this Obi-Kwankwaso or LP, NNPP, or ADC, generally, ADC coalition could face?
Now, if you ask me, I will tell you that these political parties don't have any ideology. They are just looking at a way to win elections. So politics in Nigeria, I address them as politicians, not politicians. You see, their only aim is to win election. Now, if you are thinking of ideologies, I don't think there's any of the political parties that have a clear-cut ideology. And I won't blame them. You know why? When we started this race in 1999, there were 3 political parties. Eventually, one fused to the other, and 2 political parties contested that election, the PDP and the AD. The NPP now fused into AD. If you look at what happened then, you will discover that it was the late Bola Ige that wrote the constitution of the 2 major parties, the AD and the APC that contested that election. I think he contributed to APP that later became AFPP. So you discover that it was a one-man idea that ran the elections in 1999. And these other people are now, coming out from these major 2 political parties. Recall that it was Ghana that went to court and said that INEC cannot just register 5 political parties, that it infringes its fundamental human rights. And when he won that matter in court, the door was thrown open and people started forming political parties. So the initial ideology that one man had is what is propelling what is going on today. Forget all this mantra, renew hope, and this and that. Is any hope renewed? These are the issues. If you say that somebody have an ideology, you'll now be able to see what these people will do concerning their so-called ideology.
Professor,
now, some of them bring in manifestos. The manifesto is supposed to speak of the ideology of these political parties. Have you seen any clear-cut ideology from manifestos presented? The answer is no. They will be looking at the basic things.
And Professor that's exactly what I was talking about, the lack of a unified manifesto. Professor Nat, we are going to take a break here, but when we get back, I want to add 2 more factors into the soup here. The fact that there's a lack of an ideology, and also, whether we like it or not, the lack of geographical spread and also party structure. But when we get back, we'll tackle those. Let's go on a break now, and we'll be right back with you. You're welcome back. We are still talking about a very interesting topic here with Professor Nnai, who has joined us via Zoom to have this conversation as we discuss the very interesting alliance that could be between Peter Obi and Kwankwaso, which has gotten tongues wagging all week long. We are examining the implications of such a union, the symbolism of it, and the challenges that they might face. Professor Nat, thank you very much for keeping with us. Let's get back to that conversation we were having. We're talking about ideology and the fact that it seems to be failing in this regard where we have this union here. But then I said, let's talk about structure. Well, it seems that there is a lack of structure. If you want to look at the LP or across any other party, they seem to be collapsing at the middle, whether we like it or not. Court cases, disputes internally. The APC seems to be the only party that is on its foot and doing things right. Right now, they're having their convention in Abuja, where 20 or so positions will be filled. These are decisions that will be made that would actually affect the country moving forward. It might affect the country moving forward if the APC wins. Now, this coalition, do you see it having a structure, first of all? Do you see it having a depth, let's note the geological differences between the origins of the members or the parties that they represent. Can this work in any way, shape, or form, Professor Nna?
Of structures, you will discover that in 2023, the labor movement demystified what you call structure, because without structures, it's alleged they won that election. But what happened, and at the end of the day, another person was declared winner. So they have demystified structure. That's settled. And you are talking of APC being the one that has structure, and they seem to be getting it right. I was in this studio yesterday in another program with an APC chieftain, and he agreed that there might be a likely implosion in APC because people are not looking at the things that are happening. Now, for the position of chairman, they printed only one card. The position of secretary, the same thing. Our people came to buy forms. Some of them are paid for the forms, and they were not given any form because they said they are using, what is it called again? They're not going for primaries. They are going to do, if I remember that, I will tell you. Okay. So at the end of the day, a lot of people are getting worried that they are not allowed to express themselves. And if this continues, if the impunity continues, if you trace back to what is happening to PDP now, is as a result of similar impunities that you will impose people on them, and you say people should not come and show who will represent them in a particular district. You say you are having consensus. That's the word I was looking for. You are having consensus. And consensus is not a situation where you now edge everybody out and bring forth your candidate, and you say it's a consensus candidate. That is not the meaning of consensus that I know. Consensus means that everybody will agree that this is our best candidate. This is our best foot forward. So let's put him there. But in a situation where you impose people and you say it's consensus, it's going to backlash. There's going to be a backlash, rather. So going forward, you will see the implosion of APC coming up before the elections. So the APC, the way it looks now, that the optics is right, I think it's cosmetic. Because by the time we get to the integrity of the election, you will discover that what they are doing is cosmetic. So, like I said, when you look at the structure, when you look at the individuals coming together, they might have different opinions. But once they come together and agree, like KO will say, have an accord concordia, it will now be a smooth run for them.
Right. So, Professor Nna, the issue here is, in 2023, there was conversations about people not coming out to vote, especially young people and undecided voters as to they're not sure the candidates and all that. Now, I want to believe that based on the situation in 2023 in terms of division, that's why we're having this potential partnership. Now, do you think that this potential partnership is going to reshape voters' behavior, especially among the young people and undecided voters?
Definitely, yes. However, I can equally assure you that the turnout will still be low in the next election. But there's going to be an impact because if you now discover what happened in 2023 with the movement, the obedient movement, and with the Kwankwaso movement, and them coming together now as one, you will discover that maybe the total votes might increase slightly. But that will not mean that, because people are already angry, and the ruling party will say they are disgruntled. They are not. They are not disgruntled. They are just angry with the situation. Can you imagine a situation where some of us are... the president did say something, that if he does not give us electricity, we should not give him a second term. But now he has gone to solar. He has abandoned us in disco and gone to solar. So you see the problem. So people are visibly angry, and that anger will be transferred to the election. So they are not disgruntled. Nigerians are not disgruntled elements, but they are very angry, living with anger. Some of us are living with anger with what is going on. Look at the last two months or so. They can take the light 15 times a day. I'm in band A, and that light can be taken 15 times in one day. And the Minister for Energy was talking the other day, and he was appealing that in 2 weeks. 2 weeks is not forever. At least it's going now. Some days have gone. We will give him 2 weeks and see what they can do in 2 weeks.
Right.
You see, these are the issues. So these are the issues that will make the voter turnout very low in the next election, because people come there and promise heaven and earth. They promise to, build bridges and put air conditioner in all the roads when they cannot even do the necessary things. The roads are not built. So at the end of the day, why would you believe a politician that will come and gaslight you, and at the end of the day, they will do nothing? They will just bring palliative during the election.
Professor, I want to ask you a mathematical question here. Let's take a look at the 60 million voters Nigeria has, but the fact that out of this 60 million voters, a great proportion of them are not voting, whether we like it or not. It has been shown, stats has shown this. Now, who exactly do you think that this coalition, if it works out, should be targeting? Should it be targeting to convert votes from the APC to their own party, or should they be going after these undecided voters? And how exactly, where, which ones, the northern ones or the eastern ones? Is it the youth now? What mechanism do you think would be best in order to convert votes from undecided votes to actual votes that could work in favor of this coalition come 2027?
Well, I think all-encompassing. But however, they should concentrate their energy in seeing how they will convince the people that are not voting to come into the fray. And maybe people that want to vote for the other parties to come to them with the movement, with the two movements coming together.
But
there
Professor,
are two movements coming together now.
How exactly would they do this? If the NNPP strength is in the grassroots politics in the north, and Peter Obi's would be youth-led, that youth movement, which ones would be easier or more agreeable to convert? Does the NNPP have that strength, that number? Or does the LP or former LP champion, does he have that? Which one of these would be the best option?
I think the LP man has the numbers. Recall that even some of those that disparaged him in 2023 are now apologizing to him. Ditto the Erufais. Both Erufai, the man, and his son, they have apologized to him that they were gaslighted in 2023 to disparage him. But now, even the son of Erufai in the house said if he comes out for election in 2027, that I was going to vote for him. So I think the movement is gathering momentum. And people have seen with what has happened so far that the movement is on the way to achieving success. So I think that they are going to leverage on that movement and then see what they can get from the Kwankwaso movement. But I think the major force will be the obedient movement, because it's getting ground in the north now, unlike what happened in 2023.
Professor Simon, thank you so much for joining us and, of course, giving us insight to this situation. And it keeps breaking, so every day we'll follow up and see what happened next with the coalition. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, sir.
Do have a lovely weekend.
You too. Now let's go on a short break. When we return, conversations continue. Stay with us. Welcome back, and this is the News at 9 inside of Breakfast Extra. I am Queen Celestine. The All Progressives Congress has reaffirmed its leadership, returning key officials at its fourth elective national convention in Abuja. Yawada and Ajibola Basiru emerged as national chairman and national secretary, respectively, following a consensus-driven process at Eagle Square. Their return unopposed reflects the party's decision to retain its existing zoning arrangement for National Working Committee positions, a move party officials say promotes balance and inclusivity across geopolitical zones. The convention drew over 8,000 delegates and top party leaders, including President Bola Tinubu, Vice President Kashim Shettima, and the leadership of the National Assembly.
Of our party, Chibisi Akande, Arema Olusegun Osoba, and Pius Akinyelure. Let me first of all thank Aminu Masayari, my dear friend and brother, who respectively with
Meanwhile, the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory Administration, Nyesom Wike, says reconciliation within the People's Democratic Party will continue after its national convention scheduled for March 29th and 30th in Abuja. He dismissed legal challenges from a faction of the party, insisting they will not disrupt preparations. Speaking after inspecting the velodrome in Abuja, Wike said the PDP is about 95% ready for the exercise. He confirmed that zoning arrangements have been concluded with the presidency to the south and chairmanship to the north. Wike added that while reconciliation is ongoing, the convention will proceed as planned.
But we have only come here to check the final preparation. I've told you 95%. By tomorrow, everything is so look at they have put the venue for this sitting arrangement for all the various states, the VIPs there. I don't think we have more than 2,500 delegates. I don't think so.
Are we likely to see zoning with this convention?
We have already zoned our positions, so we are not. Every zone has its own position, but the presidency is zoned to the south, and the chairmanship is zoned to the north, and all other parties. But we are coming up, we believe, with a consensus, and to make it very easy.
A fresh legal battle is unfolding within the People's Democratic Party as the Kabiru Turaki-led faction has initiated legal proceedings to halt a rival convention. The faction has approached the Supreme Court seeking to restrain the group loyal to FCT Minister Nyesom Wike from holding its national convention scheduled for March 29th and 30th. This follows an appeal challenging an earlier Court of Appeal ruling that nullified its own convention held in Ibadan in November 2025. The Turaki-led camp insists both the Federal High Court and the Appellate Court lack jurisdiction over internal party affairs. The development signals deepening divisions within the PDP ahead of crucial political engagements. A major political development in Kano State as Deputy Governor Aminu Gwazo has resigned from office. His spokesperson confirmed the decision, though no official reason has been given. The resignation follows rising tensions with the State House of Assembly, where allegations of misconduct had sparked moves towards possible disciplinary action. The development also comes amid broader political shifts after Governor Abu Yusuf's recent defection to the APC, which has triggered key changes within the administration. Analysts say Gwazo's exit could further reshape Kano's political landscape as constitutional steps begin towards appointing a new deputy governor. Former Governor of Kaduna State Nasir El-Rufai has been released from the custody of the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission. The temporal freedom is to enable the former governor perform the funeral rites of his late mother, who died in Cairo, Egypt, after a period of sickness. His son, Basir El-Rufai, confirmed the development in a social media post on Friday. El-Rufai had been in detention since the 18th of February over allegations of financial misconduct. The anti-corruption agency is yet to release an official statement outlining the terms of his release. And meanwhile, the Lagos State Commissioner of Police, Fatai Tijani, has outlined a new security strategy aimed at strengthening policing across the state following a strategic meeting with police formations, divisions, and tactical units. The commissioner emphasized policing with humility, and integrity, while prioritizing visibility policing, sustained raids of flashpoints, and the reactivation of area command patrols. He also ordered a clampdown on cultism, declared zero tolerance for extortion and lawlessness, and urged residents to cooperate with the police for improved security.
Of policing that I want them to adopt is what I want to roll out today for now. Well, for me, visibility policing is very important. Criminals should be aware that it is not going to be business as usual. I know there are a lot of raids that have been carried out. We will still continue to raid black spots. The activity of land grabbers, which has become another thing, is not going to be tolerated. I want to inform you that the command is not going to tolerate any civil matter. If matters are reported and they are civil, we definitely refuse or refer this civil. There is going to be zero tolerance to extortion. If anybody is arrested and money is demanded, he should come up and speak out. He should speak out and let the authority know, so that we know where to face and who to deal with. And I can assure you that whoever is caught in that web will be dealt with ruthlessly.
Now, outside the shores of Nigeria, cyber security concerns are growing in the United States after Iran-linked hackers claimed responsibility for breaching the personal email of Kash Patel, the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The hacking group, called itself Handala Hack Team, says it accessed Patel's inbox and published personal photographs and documents online, including private images and a sample of emails allegedly dating from 2010 to 2019. The FBI confirmed the email account was targeted, but said no government information was compromised and described the data as historical in nature. And that's all for the news. Let's go on a quick break. When we return, Breakfast Extra continues. Stay with us.
Okay, producers just called me something. Welcome. It's our second hour here for Breakfast Extra, and we have another conversation. This time we go to Benue State. Now, reports of rising cases of femicide in Benue State are drawing renewed attention to gender-based violence in Nigeria. Behind each case is a pattern: vulnerability, silence, and often a system that struggles to respond quickly enough. While awareness has improved, the persistence of these incidents points to deeper structural and cultural challenges. At a national level, the issue raises pressing concerns about enforcement of existing laws, access to justice, and also the protection of women in both public and private spaces. Advocacy groups continue to call for stronger institutional responses, but gaps remain in reporting mechanisms, survivor support, and also accountability. Now, we do have a package to run that was put together by News Central correspondent Suese Anyo. So let's take a look at that, and when we get back, we will be speaking with her on the issue.
Among residents of Makurdi following a series of unexplained killings targeting young women.
It's also a very crazy and scary statistics currently that says every 3 days, a woman or a girl is killed in Nigeria.
With no confirmed arrests so far, anxiety among residents is growing as many young people say they are now more cautious about their movements, especially at night, and are urging friends to be security conscious at all times.
My biggest fear is being killed in this country. It's so obvious that this country as a whole is not safe. So my advice to them is be careful. First and foremost, wherever you are going, your family members should be aware. Yeah, you should let them know that, okay, this way you're going to, that's where you're going to, so that they can keep in touch with you.
The crisis has also sparked a conversation among young men in the capital.
It's an incident that the society should frown on. Well, killing of female gender because of their sex is inhuman. It's very bad and it's alarming. And we should try every possible means to stop this incident because it is not good.
Rights advocates say the situation reflects a wider challenge across Nigeria, where violence against women remains a serious concern. They are calling on authorities to improve street lighting, increase night patrols, and ensure that perpetrators are identified and prosecuted.
Femicide, amongst other GBV, forms of GBV, are a crime to the state, to the community, and contributes to vulnerabilities of women and girls in our community.
Residents say restoring a sense of safety will require both community vigilance and decisive action from authorities as families continue to demand justice for the victims. In Benue, for News Central, Siwesi Anyo.
To explore this conversation further, we're joined by our reporter, Siwesi Ayo. Although we're supposed to be joined by Inyam Ikwereve, who is the Executive Director, Initiative for Human Rights and Gender Awareness. Hopefully, they'll be able to join us. Siwesi, thank you. Good morning. Let's talk about this development from Benue State. First off, why Benue in the first place? And how is the community responding to this incident?
Well, good morning. It's a very concerning situation that is currently going on in the state. And it's rather sad that despite how serious this situation is, we've witnessed the nonchalance on the part of authorities that should be enforcing laws to protect women and girls, not just in Benue State, but in Nigeria at large. And it's well known by everyone that femicide is not just a human rights issue. Femicide is also a public safety concern that should concern every single person. Everybody should be concerned that this thing is affecting the safety of our young women and girls. Why women? Why constantly targeting young women? I've permit me to kindly go back in time to recall when I began to observe the constant killing of these women. It started in 2010. I was in 111 then, and one of our classmates went out at night to hang out with friends. And by the following morning, we were in the lecture hall when we heard that a young lady's dead body was found by the road, only for us to get to the scene and find out it was our classmate. No answer was given to that situation. No arrests were made. No justice. No answer to any of the questions that we asked. And she was buried and life moved on. And in 211, we had a similar case with one of our classmates again. So that means I lost two of my classmates to femicide. And until this day, in 2026, there has been no answers to any of those questions. No justice. Nobody has been held accountable. No arrests have been made. And it raises the question of policy. What exactly are policymakers doing to ensure that women and girls are protected? Because we have laws. We have a lot of these laws that are meant to protect women and girls. It's not just about putting them on paper. Are they being actually implemented? Are they being executed? Because I really think they are not. If they were, we would not be having this constant cases of femicide in Benue. Around 2022 and 2023, we had a spike in femicide. And some of the stories actually trended on social media where a young lady was, found dead with her body parts missing, and there were no arrests made. And these are people these things are not done by ghosts. They're actually done by humans. So are they invisible that they cannot be found? So we've had cases, even last year, December, a lady went missing, and after which was found by the riverside dead. No explanation for that. And then in 2026, we are witnessing a rise in femicide in Benue State again. And I can tell you categorically that between January and March, we found more than 3 dead bodies lying on the streets in Benue State. And until this day, nobody has been arrested. Nobody has been held accountable. Nobody has answered any of the questions that people are asking. So young girls and women are not safe in Benue at this point, because you don't even know what you're doing right or what you're doing wrong. You might think you're being safe, but at the end of the day, you become a victim of everything. And at this point, nobody is safe anymore, because a lady that's a vendor has been called to go and deliver goods at somebody's home. And she was found dead the next morning. She left 2 young children at home who were awaiting her return. And unfortunately, she never made it back home to her children. So should young people not hustle anymore? Should women not have the freedom to go about their daily life without the fear of getting killed every day on the street?
So I say,
these are some of the questions we are
Okay.
So now we're being joined by Nyam Ikwereve, I hope I pronounced that right, who's the Executive Director, Initiative for Human Rights and Gender Awareness. You're welcome, Nyam. I'm sure you've heard all that our correspondent had talked about, the bodies they found on the road in Benue and, asking questions as to policies and all that. Now, based on your work, what patterns do you think are emerging in these cases? And what's the situation right now? What are the root causes of this femicide?
Okay, so thank you for having me on the show this morning. I hope you can hear me all. Yes. So there are a lot of complex interplays as to the root cause of the growing cases of femicides in Benue State. We can talk about the entrenched patriarchal cultural norms. Then we also have the prolonged security crisis in the state, as well as economic hardships that it's prevalent in the state at the moment. So these factors contribute are the key drivers of violence against women. So let's not also forget that, let's also understand that any conversation or WhatsApp messaging is a potential or leads to murder in Benue State, because that conversation usually starts, all of these key drivers these conversations are amplified on social media, right? Where young people engage on social media, and there's also misogynistic statements or remarks that are amplified on social media, and young men are feeding on this information. This has become like a mentoring platform where they are mentored and they are mobilized to carry out targeted violence against women. So it tells you that as long as you are a woman in Benue State or a girl in Benue State, you are at risk, irrespective of your ethnicity, your status, and what have you not. As long as you are a woman, you are at risk. And we also need to look at there's lawlessness, impunity, perpetrators who hide behind digital anonymity to exploit young women, engage them in exploitative activities, and when they show resistance, that is when they are not able to report, because even when they report, they are blamed, they are shamed, and their families are are targeted, are threatened one way or the other. So all of these issues contribute to why femicide is still an issue in Benue State. And like the previous speaker said, there has not been any form of access to justice. Once we find dead bodies, we ensure that, okay, families come to identify, and there is no counseling, there's no investigation, there's no coordination from the cyber unit to gender desk to understand, to track what is the reason, why is this happening, at what time, at what season, at what time of the year are these incidents are reoccurring in the state. All of this information is just laid there because incidents like this, police, or law enforcement agencies feel that incidents like this, the victims are to be blamed, not the perpetrators. So the perpetrators, believe that the system makes them, amplifies impunity. They can never be caught. So of course, it emboldens them to continue to, target women. And let's not forget that the digital space is such an excellent enabling space for these conversations, where these conversations start and then cascade to the physical space. And of course, these girls, when they find themselves in this situation, it is if they even happen to survive, it is difficult for them to report. It is difficult for them because of the after effects.
Wait, let me cut in there, if you don't mind. You've mentioned about social media being something that's pushing them to do, whatever they're doing, and then you've been in works in terms of gender equality and all that, and fighting for women in Benue State. But I need you to give us a case scenario, because you mentioned that nothing is being done. Like Seweso mentioned, no justice, no follow-up, no nothing. Can you give us a case study of how long it takes when the situation is being reported to the police, to whatever department is in charge? What do they say? Because it looks like you mentioned something about the police blaming the victims of going out at night, and the perpetrators, taking the fact that there are no lights and there are no much security. So can you give us like a simple case study, data to say, somebody died, for example, and it took us this long and still no justice? Is there anything like that?
A whole lot of them. We've had incidences where survivors, for instance, the growing trend now in Benue State is bike men or bike owners that lure young girls. You get on a bike, the next thing they are deviating from they are taking a different route that does not connect to your destination or the location where you are to alight. And when the survivors, complain to the law enforcement agency, what is done is they dilly-dally. They ask, where were you going to? Abi, you were going to see your boyfriend, tell us the truth. Those sort of remarks hinder
justice.
Victims to access justice. So it is important for law enforcement agencies to be trained in ethical investigative approach that is also survivor, centered. So that process of questioning itself, just makes the survivor not to, is not willing or confident enough to share information. In a situation where they even go ahead to share this information, nothing is done. They tell you that, okay, investigation is still ongoing. You hear that investigation is still ongoing up to 4, 3, 5 times. And that in itself is discouraging. Okay. So the access to justice is faulty. The criminal justice system is equally faulty. And all of this play a major role in delayed justice and it's also a traumatic process for both the victims as well as their families.
Okay. Nyinyam, thank you very much for the download there. But there's a common thread between what you're saying and what Sowese is saying. And I'm going to go back to Sowese now and also remind her of an earlier instance where she was the actual victim of a violent act. If you remember, I think it was early this year, or was it late 2025, Sowese? We had you on this show where there was a complaint where you had been hit by a police officer in Benue State. Now, I'm wondering whether it's a cultural misnomer or something. I'm not very sure. Does this call for a total reorientation of the general community in these communities where these things are happening? Has anyone gone down in depth to find out why it seems to be that women are being subdued by men in these areas, even if it's only cases of violence, which in itself is still wrong? And who are these authorities? How is enforcement currently being handled, or what suggestions do you have for enforcement? Let's have you, Nyinyam, first off, and then Sowese can also answer.
Okay. Okay, like I earlier mentioned, the patriarchal system in Benue State amplifies and has high disregard for women issues. So it starts from, it's a systemic issue where the voices of women are intentionally silenced. And these issues are seen as, it's a private affair, it's a family issue. So why bring it to the public? It is not identified as a crime. It is not identified as something that needs to be, it's not identified as something or a crime to women, to the community and to the state at large. It's always reduced to, oh, it's a private thing, submit to your husband and all of this, just go to the family and this will be sorted out. So that in itself, it is what makes the perpetrators, it emboldens them. They feel that they are never held accountable. So that in itself makes them bold enough to continue to dehumanize women. And it is equally, when you talk of what should be done, suggestions, as CSOs, we've highlighted a couple of strong recommendations. And for us as an organization at IGA, we work with the Federation of International Female Lawyers, the Benue State chapter, it's a legal female network that is very proactive when it comes to addressing, providing legal services, access to justice for victims. We had an incident here that Sowese is also quite aware of, that a prominent government official allegedly blackmailed some undergraduate students by sharing non-consensual images, and the feeder network worked proactively to ensure that the survivors were able to access justice. And at the moment, the case is at the court. And of course, there's always adjournment here and there. But what has then happened to the survivor that we need to address is that they've been isolated from their families. Their families no longer want to associate with them. And some of them are actually out of school because they do not have means to, pay their tuition fees. So for us to adequately, drive a survivor-centered approach, it is important for us to have social safety nets for survivors. Ensure that there are safe spaces where they are provided with psychosocial counseling, they are provided with some sort of economic empowerment that will help them stabilize and continue, for those that are still in school, continue with their education, because a dropout from school would exacerbate that power imbalance because they do not have access to education again. And another important social safety net that should be in place to drive survivor-centered response is to also ensure that their stories, their experiences are collated in an ethical manner, prioritizing their mental health, prioritizing their economic empowerment and stability, and ensuring that they are protected as well as their families. Because when these perpetrators cannot access the survivors, they target their immediate family. So also ensure that their families are protected and they have their safety is ensured. So this is just one out of a million approach we can begin to think about. And it's also important for the cyber unit and the gender desk to work together, have a coordinated partnership that tracks processes, that tracks evidence, collecting evidence, and how to even safeguard this evidence. There should be a protocol that is ethical.
All right,
And
protocol for forensics and also authorities and policies put in place for the protection of women.
Yeah.
We'd like to say thank you very much. Unfortunately, we have run out of the allotted time for this segment. We've also lost our correspondent, Soese Anyo, to the network. But thank you very much for joining us and having this conversation, which is very important, especially looking at the way things are in Benue State against odds for women, which is very, very unfair.
Yeah.
We'll continue to follow this, and hopefully that there is some succor brought to the women of Benue State in this regard. Thank you very much. To our viewers, do stay with us. We've got more conversation coming your way. We'll be right back as we talk about women in leadership, progress and struggles in workplaces. Do stay with us. This is Breakfast at 8.
Welcome back. Now we're talking about women that are rising into leadership across sectors, from boardrooms to public service. The numbers are improving slowly, but beneath that progress lies a more complicated reality. Representation is growing, yet access, influence, and sustained advancement remain uneven. Globally and here in Nigeria, many women still navigate structural barriers, workplace bias, limited mentorship pipelines, and the tension between professional and societal expectations continue to shape outcomes. The conversation is no longer just about getting women into leadership, but about what happens once they get there. Are they empowered to lead or simply present at the table?
Very good question. So to help us unpack this, we are joined by Omomi Akingbongwe, Executive Director of WIMBIZ. Thank you very much for joining us. She's in the studio with us. Thank you. She walked in like a queen, by the way.
She is a queen.
I will describe it. She walked in, paused, turned, profiled us, and waited for the applause. Well, there you have it.
There you go, Miss World.
Please do continue.
Well, so of course, this is something that has always been talked about: equality, femininity, and all that, and women wanting, equal rights per se. So, what made you want to focus on women in leadership, having to get the data and statistics? So, tell us all about it.
I mean, right now, thank you for having me. Thank you, and for the applause.
You're welcome.
All right. So the conversation on gender equality has really moved from being like a social cause to more of an economic imperative. Take a literal example of you having two legs and walking on one. So that's pretty much it. And the decision-making table is one that everything that is decided there snowballs on how it affects everyone. And women make up, if not more, half of the population of the country. So it just makes sense to have them at the decision-making table. The perspective of both gender coming together brings immense value. So having just one dominant side taking all the decisions would definitely leave us with blind spots. And that's why at WIMBIZ, our mission is to inspire and empower women to attain leadership positions, because we know that it is not about a social cause or charity, but it is an economic and strategic imperative that should be in place.
There's so much to unpack when you talk about women in leadership. First of all, what sectors, what places, what institutions are women lacking? Are these instances engineered, or are they forced out of culture or whatever was from before? There's so many questions as to why the stats show that women are not all that into these positions of leadership. So what have you discovered? What are the causes of this gap that we see in leadership for women?
So the Reykjavik Index for Leadership, just to give an understanding of what this index is all about, is an index that measures people's perception, even to being receptive for a woman being in leadership position. And over the course of the year, we see improvements. I think in the year 2024, the overall score for Nigeria in terms of people's perception was rated 56 compared to last year, which is now at 59.
Okay.
So the perception is improving. People are
People are
getting
more open.
exactly
Okay.
to seeing a woman being at the top compared to years ago where it's like hardly existing. But more interesting, I mean, you mentioned different sectors. There are different ratings too in that Reykjavik Index talking about what sector is doing well
I know
in
the
terms
banking
of.
is doing well.
Oh yes,
Fantastically
so
well.
that's actually the sector topping the list right now with a rating of 73 over 100 in fact. And I mean, we could definitely see all of that happening. Now, the reasons for these barriers, because the women are there, but what are the reasons? So it spans across social-cultural reasons, and at the same time, the way organizations and even our politics are structured. There's something that I usually say, that the workplace is designed for people that have someone taking care of life for them. And I'll let that sink.
Expatiate, please. I'd like to. I see you thinking. You went down that road, yeah? You just went like it was a very straight road with arrows pointing to where to go. But I still want more. If you can explain that more, because I find it very interesting.
Yeah. So if you look at
the workplace is designed for people who have people taking care of their life.
Taking care of life.
Okay.
With that, I say good night.
In the morning.
Please expatiate.
So if you look at women versus men, and no judgment, women are disproportionately saddled with the responsibility of care, the domestic age. And it's not just about their immediate home alone, even for the elder care, even for the home front management, the kids and all of that. And this is all what we want, even as men and women, beyond the career that we have. We definitely want to have that family home unit. But when it comes to both gender, women are disproportionately saddled with that bit. So if you look at the way the workplace is structured, it's not structured giving room to recognize that this woman is saddled with, oh, my child, the first point of call is the woman. Oh, father, mother, catering for things in the household. So the way we're structured, you just expect that all of that should be sorted out. But the man and the woman that is disproportionately saddled with that responsibility would definitely need a different kind of workplace support structure to function and rise and thrive.
Wow.
Interesting.
E.
A very different way to look at it.
Yeah.
I have been empathetic to women in workplaces and places of leadership, but I've never looked at it from that perspective. Ever. So that's a new one, and I'm hoping I'm not the only one who got to see it, in Technicolor this time. It's always been in black and white.
Yeah. So you talked about the index, how we've moved from 56 to 59 in 2025. Would you say part of that would be mentorship? And so part of what WIMBYs do, in terms of building women and showing them, would you say mentorship? And again, you talked about barriers. Would you say it's also upbringing? That is, having them think that, oh, I can't achieve this leadership.
So, I mean, first is, it's easier to believe in what you're seeing.
Right.
So if I'm seeing more women in leadership position, it's automatic for me to aspire to want to be in that. But if it's always looking like, you find out that in our cause in WIMBIs, in engaging some women in some sectors, they do not even think of, oh, I should apply for this leadership position, because it's always been the men there. So in terms of their aspiration is going this way, not that way. So in terms of the index now, for instance, and what is responsible for that improvement, all these conversations count. Being able to talk about it, being able to advocate for it, and of course mentorship too is adding to that, because by the time you are assigned to an accomplished woman who's able to talk to you on how she was able to balance things, how she was able to advocate for things, and as we're getting more women in that position, they're able to also advocate for these issues. Certain things will not occur to you as a man, naturally. But if you're a woman in a leadership position, still an example for the banking industry now. If you look at some of these banks that they have the female CEOs, they're deliberate intentions to make the workplace easier for the women to thrive. You see some of these banks now having crutches. So it's easy for you to come to work, have your child being taken care of, and that burden, because that mental note that you have to keep, and then you're able to focus on the core function. So all of that is what is driving towards it. But even if we continue at this pace, it's still going to take us a long while to get to that gender equity that we desire. So there's still more that needs to be done.
So there's, sorry, I know, Mazina, you wanted to say something, but based on the index score, banking and finance is right at the top. And then we have childcare. Then we have fashion and beauty. So that's where I believe you're expecting to see more women, but it's low, because I have to tell you, my hair, my nails, they are men, not even women. So how do we fix that? Is this something we're going to fix, or it's just the trend? Everybody
what do you want to fix? I mean,
everybody can do anything.
You're fixing what exactly? Because if men are in that segment or that sector...
We're talking about women in leadership. So if they're not leading...
This is what I say about us men. You guys relegate us a bit.
But I think that's also a way of just saying that, you know, the trends now is there's nothing particular for a man or anything. So what's your take on that?
So when it comes to the beauty industry, it's business. Do you understand? And
now
being able to key into opportunities to transform certain things. And that takes me to financing for business women, which there's also still a very huge gap. Even in this report, it shows that the perception of major funders would still reflect that they're more comfortable with
giving a loan or assistance or investments to the mill.
When you see the men behind the scenes. But data has also shown that when it comes to being able to meet up with your loan responsibilities, being able to pay up, the women do better.
Thank you.
The women do better. So,
in your research, did you ever come across anything called the broken wrong concept? Let me explain it to you now. What happens is, companies would say, yes, we are open to women, you know, we're a women-friendly kind of organization. And then at entry level, everybody's welcome. You know, it's a great proportion of women to men. But then somewhere in the middle, there's a broken wrong where they can't ascend any further. And I'm wondering whether it's something that you note as an advocate for women in leadership, or whether it's something establishments hoodwink us over and say, we're taking care of the women order, but don't let them pass there, don't let them pass there. Do you witness this?
Yes, so it's not necessarily don't let them pass there. So it's still about the structure.
It's just a system that doesn't encourage women.
Most of them have policies in place saying, oh, we do give maternity leave, you can do flexible work structure and things like that to make it easier for women to do. First is, do they track and measure? Because anything that you don't measure is still as good as not in place. Now, when it comes to entry level, like you mentioned, the influx is pretty much balanced. You have both male, female coming in. But as a woman, you ask for flexible work structure so that you can balance out things. There's a perception already that you're not committed.
Wow.
compared to the guy who's showing up,
Let's
turning
go.
up, all of that. And
Because
they're
at the back
always
of your
there.
mind, you already have a package or a baggage that you're taking care
Yeah,
of.
Exactly.
very important one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's that perception of this one is not committed. And without any really major bias against that individual, when the decisions are being taken, she's not in the forefront, not in the picture. They're just like, oh, she has a lot she's dealing with right now. And on your
It's
behalf,
not
they make
intentional, they're just being
excuse.
considerate,
Exactly.
but still it's
Not considerate.
Yeah.
not considerate at the same time.
And when it comes to the promotions, and this is one of the key things too we're actively advocating for, there's a tendency to say, oh, this year she was away on maternity leave for 4 months. And then automatically what you're being rated on includes that 4 months that you're away, rather than being prorated for the moments where you were active in work. So ideally, you should rate me for 12 months for the 8 months that I was on board.
Yeah.
Amami, because we're out of time, I really want to know what your body is doing to help policies in Nigeria make sure that there is enforcement for the opportunities for women to actually be able to make it into leadership positions. What tangible policies or efforts have you made?
The first thing that we recognize at WIMBIS is the fact that there's power when we come together. Instead of all individuals working in this space having their voices in silos, we formed a coalition. So there's a coalition called Women in Leadership, which is comprising of WIMBIS, WISCAR, WILAN, and the Nigerian Governors Forum. And we came together with 3-point agenda because the issues are plenty. And if you try to address everything at the same time, exactly. So let's take it bite size. The first thing is that we're advocating for better workplace reforms, especially for women. And we're starting that from advocating that every organization should at least make room for minimum of 16 weeks maternity leave.
16.
And
how many do we get as men?
2 weeks paternity.
It's not enough.
That's another conversation.
But go
because
on.
right now, most organizations don't even have paternity leave. So the conversation we're trying to drive is this aspect of childbearing is a shared responsibility. So don't just make it all about maternity leave alone.
Okay.
The
All right.
men too need time off to provide that support and also bond with the child.
Thank you.
Enhance the
I
family.
advocate for 6, but
You're
you were telling about the 3-point agenda. What's number 2?
Number 2 is that organizations, especially the listed organizations, and we've been engaging the Nigerian stock NGX on this, should have minimum of 35% female representation.
35.
Yes,
Okay.
on their boards.
What made you? What made it 35? Why 35?
Ideally, it should be 50-50.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But we know it's a journey.
Okay, so let's start with 35.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that 35 is like up
Baby
until
steps.
the end of this year.
Okay.
Currently, the top 30 are 31%.
Okay.
An average, which is a huge improvement from 21% where we're coming from.
Number 3.
And the final one faces the public sector, that the state cabinets and national portfolio.
Let's close this show. Let's end the show now. We're done. I'm sorry, but yeah, that's almost impossible.
We'll send a man to represent.
But finish. Say, do
Should
continue.
have minimum of 35% representation. It's not a doom story.
Is state representation that's in
their
governance
cabinets,
now?
yes.
Yeah, state cabinets. State. And then also perhaps national as
Federal,
well.
yes.
Federal, eventually. How many? 30%?
35%.
What's the election date? 2027, February.
We'll keep talking about it till it happens. If not, we'll send you Mazino to represent us women.
I will, let me dust my wig. Omawumi, it's been exciting talking to you from when you stepped in like a queen to everything that you
Miss
said.
World,
The aura about you is so calming, and I can feel that leadership quality in you. And I hope that women do get that representation that you are so
Passionate.
fervently championing. And I'd like to say congratulations to all women because of her efforts. Thank you very much, Omawumi.
Thank you so much,
thank you.
Mami.
All right.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
So do stay tuned. We've got more conversation, and I think one more hour. I don't know what the time is.
Yeah, because I'm back.
Yes, because you're back. So do stay with us. We'll be back on Breakfast. Welcome back, and it's time for another conversation inside the final hour for Saturday edition of Breakfast Extra. Now, a proposed ceasefire in the Middle East has once again brought global attention to a conflict that continues to shape international stability. The U.S. President Donald Trump his announcement on ceasefire plans has been met with cautious responses, particularly from Iran, which says it's still reviewing the proposal. The uncertainty reflects a deeper reality. Peace in the region remains fragile, and diplomacy is often as contested as the conflict itself. For Africa, however, the implications are not distant. Global conflicts ripple through energy markets, security alignments, and also economic stability. From fuel prices to foreign policy positions, countries across the continent often find themselves reacting to decisions made far beyond their borders. So now the question then becomes how Africa navigates influence in a world where power is unevenly distributed.
And to explore this further, we're joined by Vladimir Danso, international security analyst. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Mr. Danso, let's talk about this whole situation of ceasefire proposal. How credible is it, given the current geopolitical tensions?
It is a dicey situation, coming from the fact that, one, Trump cannot be trusted, he's not stable, changes his mind at will, and therefore it will be very difficult for Iran to just pick up his words and swallow them. In the first place, diplomacy was at work when the war started. So how would they trust this one? Secondly, is it not a ploy to get a breather so that the Americans gather more forces for some ground offensive? Already he's talking about the diplomacy or Georgia situation when he's also sending the SEALs and the forces from the Southeast Asia to the Gulf. So it's a dicey situation how even the international community will swallow this. Europe is not very happy about it. Europe doesn't know what to do. Actually, they are divided. The whole world, the United Nations is also not having the teeth that can bite. So we are in a quandary right now, very seriously in the world.
So if you say that these are more symbolic or maybe just time-wasting methods by the U.S. president, are you saying that this ceasefire is not possible at all, that it's a ruse, that it's fake? And what are the implications that being, noting that Iran has also signaled caution? What does that tell us about the likelihood of an acceptance or even any agreement between the two nations? And where does Israel lie in all of this?
I wouldn't say it's a ruse, but the thing, it cannot be trusted because, again, we haven't roped in the Israelis. What are their demands? Are they part of the 15-point program? How will Iran also take this? Because they have indicated that what has been submitted is maximalist. It's like take it or leave it kind of situation. You don't go into a diplomatic talk with a kind of take it or leave it situation. But that is always the coercive kind of position of America. And so I'm not saying it's a ruse as such, but I'm saying it may not hold. It will be broken at a point if it is even taken today.
Okay.
At any point in time, as Israel is not part of it, there is the possibility that Israel will do something which is inimical to the very text of what is being discussed.
And then there is the response from Iran. Iran has given its own 3 points agenda, noting one of them which says contested access and ownership of the Strait of Hormuz. Now, this is where it affects the rest of the world because the Strait of Hormuz is not just known for energies, transportation, but other things as well. The entire Gulf states, they farm nothing. They have nothing. Food gets through. Pharmaceuticals get through from other nations. Now, let's bring in the African perspective now. How would this affect Africa, noting the closure of the Strait of Hormuz from our energies and also perhaps maybe other imports or exports?
For Africa, we are always at the end of the negatives. It will affect Africa very tremendously. But in fact, I do not think Iran believes that it can be given that unfettered control over the Strait of Hormuz. It's a bargaining chip. It's a bargaining chip. Normally in diplomacy, you start from the maximalist position and you have your partner, the alternative that you would, the best alternative that you would want to arrest at a certain point in time. So I believe Iran's position is a direct reflection of how they think of the American position. And so from that high altitude, they will come to a point. Yes, they wanted some control over the Strait of Hormuz. And if it is given, it means that at any point in time, it will be used as a chip against any other country, against the whole world. But that would be far-fetched. For us in Africa, you know, fertilizer comes from the energy sources come a lot from there. And at any time that there is a small uptick of energy prices, the whole of Africa go way higher. Even though we have countries which have enormous oil, Nigeria, Libya, you know, and others, Angola, they don't mean much because of the way the petrodollar has been structured. What is happening to Nigeria, for example, people are not paying attention to it now. But when I look at it, I just believe that something wrong is going on. Nigeria is selling more than 60% of its own oil on the world market.
Unrefined.
Whereas Dangote has a refinery. And what he's being given has been brought down just because America says so. America wants more oil on the market and Nigeria is obeying. Nobody is paying attention to it, while Dangote is being squeezed of enough oil for him to be able to help Africa. He's giving the leeway for Africa to use him.
And what do you think this says about our relationship with America currently, noting that we are actually acceding to them exporting more than 60% of our raw oil?
It is cowardice. I strongly suspect that if all Africa should come together and have a common platform, common policies on oil, common policies on minerals, common policies, you know, so that we can fight the world with one fist. Unfortunately, if Nigeria is squeezed and Nigeria is able to get away, they can squeeze Angola or they can squeeze Libya. The biggest problem of Africa is because we are not fighting with one fist and we are giving in. In fact, the moment we are threatened, for heaven's sake, if Tinubu is threatened by something, anything, it could be his own past, it could be anything. He will play to the tunes of America. Right. And it's happening all over the continent.
Professor, there's one more thing, one more angle that you just brushed on now. You talked about Africa presenting a united front. Has this ever been done before? And if you ask me, from history and from what I can remember or have read or researched, the fact is once anything comes under threat, once the petrodollar comes under threat, there seems to be plenty of activity, movements, deaths. We saw this happen when it came to the Saddam Hussein, for one, who refused to buy in petrodollars. And then we saw Gaddafi, who wanted a united African currency. And these were all centered around energies, around oil, around petrodollar. Now, how can Nigeria carefully present itself and also unite other African countries when it comes to these energy situations, that it does not become a target itself for America?
Unfortunately, we are all racing to the button, which is wrong. Nigeria has what it takes to be able to rally around the Libyas, the Algerias, the Moroccos, the Angolas, all those who have big reserves of oil into some consortium. They have OPEC. Why can't we have a certain OPEC-like African consortium where we have a voice and we also matter in taking decisions which affect petrol? The point is this, that it is just because our leadership in Africa is not trait and transformational. If we have trait and transformational leaders, they will be bold. Of course, the Gaddafis were taken away. But because we have this history, we should find a way of insulating ourselves from the wrath of America. It can be done. It can seriously be done. If China has been able to call the bluff of the US and doing their own thing the way they want, Africa as a big continent, 1.4 billion people market. I mean, I strongly suspect that if our leaders are strong, but we are very weak. I remember a very sad incident that happened at the United Nations some 2-3 years ago. Mrs. Arikana Kwao, a very fierce lady, talking about French neocolonialism and asking the UN to try and persuade France to abolish its path of neocolonialism and the colonial debt which African countries are still paying. She was so fierce that, in fact, the whole hall was trembling. The following day, just the following day, America demanded her withdrawal, and the AU withdrew her. She was the AU representative at the UN. This is sad. This is shameful. If we continue to do this, then we will continue to be hewers of wood and drawers of water.
Right. Okay, so you mentioned about, Africans needing to come together to fight with one fist. If not, they're weak. Now, would you say that is going to translate to us not having a diplomatic leverage in this situation? But if at all we have, what would that be?
Certainly, that would rather give us the diplomatic leverage.
Mr. Dance, are you there?
There is a way. We have China, Russia, ready to accept us if we flirt with them a little. And the more we flirt with the East, the more the West becomes uncomfortable.
Yes.
And so this is a tool. If we begin to team up with the East on all fronts where oil is concerned, where international structures are concerned, I believe the world will sit up. As I speak to you right now, because of the what happened with the AES, the Association of Sahelian States, France has lost completely in Africa, and Europe wants to reset. I know talks are going on or ongoing in Ghana and several places to reset. That is European reset in West Africa. My government is being engaged, and they are going through quiet countries like Denmark, Sweden, and things like that to talk to African leaders, that's West African leaders, to see whether Europe can reset in Africa. This is good because of the posture taken by Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Can we do more of that in Africa? So we have the leverage, we have the diplomatic leverage, if we have the willpower to do it.
Now, you've just entered another topic now, and it has to be touched on. The only reason why these Sahelian states, the Sahel belt, these countries that have chosen to do what they're doing independently is because they are run by military rulers. So the very thin line is how to make that happen in a democratic setting. If you have suggestions, sir, what would they be?
In a democratic setting, you are even better because the parliaments are there. If the parliaments buy into government positions, and then you have to do a lot of diplomatic long talk.
There are diplomatic considerations, and that's the problem. With these diplomatic considerations are policies that you cannot or you might not be able to breach because of certain red tapes or considerations put in place by bodies. But in a military setting, all that doesn't matter. You can just go straight to your ambition, your ambition. But so that
you are very right. You are very right. But what I was saying is what we call elite complementarities. So if the Ghanaian president is on good terms with Tinubu, for example, you start jojoing and laying down what you may be able to do. America's coercion of the West is precisely because they are able to just jojo with the like-minded heads of state and or government, and they are able to get their way through. This is what some African leaders should be able to do, get elite complementarity, go working, and you can do that. Team up with those countries we say are under military rule or whatnot. I personally do not care about military governments, because if the government is doing well, the reason why they left, for example, is such that the so-called democratically elected governments were not doing what they are supposed to do. And if these ones are doing well, there are a whole lot of complexities, security complexes, actually, within the West African sub-region. And the elite that have been elected to various governments are not seeing to it that these complexes are done away with. One of them is pure security. rise or uptick of terrorism within the sub-region,
okay,
food security, employment security, etc., etc. These are not being taken care of. And so the whole of the West African sub-region was turned into a heaven for terrorists.
Okay.
Now, these three countries have shown the way that external interference even exacerbates the situation. Supposing ECOWAS were working, you talked about red tapeism and that's true. But can we get leaders who will be able to bully their way through one way or the other and get things done? This is what we need. And I doff my hat for the three countries.
Interesting input there. Thank you, sir.
So with all this conversation, of course, you talked about how Dangote is being squeezed, 60% of our oil being, taking out. In all this conflict and, these security challenges, what lesson can Africa as a whole draw from this, prolonged nature of this conflict?
Several lessons. Number one is for us to learn how to be resilient, how to be self-sustaining, how to look inward and be able to program ourselves in such a way that we don't fall victims to this kind of global bondage. Africa has plenty of oil, as I said. So why can't we have our own African consortium on oil? Two, we need to intensify or in a multiple geometric way, try and hasten integration. If we were integrated, these things do not matter. Africa also must look at food sufficiency, production sufficiency. But if individual countries are being coerced to play the tunes of the West especially, then we'll be continuing the job of hewers of wood and drawers of water. I believe integration is number one, resilience, number two, getting our house in order so that we are sufficient in most of these things. Why are we importing fertilizers from outside? Why are we? Ukrainian war and Africa was reeling. Middle East war and we are reeling. I believe that the West can rely rather on Africa. They are at the apex of their development. There's nowhere to go anymore. They have nothing. Africa is untapped. So we need to now sit up. We need to sit down actually. Our leaders must rethink. There's nothing that's going to happen. They may be taken one by one, but then if the path is chosen, the rest will follow.
Vladimir, let's jump back on the war in the Middle East now. Let's take a look at the three parties here, Israel, Iran, and also America. The U.S. president had, initially said that this war was not, he didn't call it a war back then, but he said it wasn't going to go past 6 weeks. We see that it's fourth week now, and he's deploying ground troops. He's yet in talks with Iran. According to him, yet their ground troops are being deployed. Do you see this extending past 6 weeks? If it does not, what would be the deciding factor that will stop it from extending so? If it does extend past, what are we looking at when it comes to energies and the world?
Well, I see it extending past the 6 weeks because it bodes well for Iran to extend it beyond the 6 weeks. Iran is using the ploy of, squeezing the world for the world to talk on their behalf. And so the longer it lasts, the better it is for Iran. For America, the earlier it lasts, the better. But then it cannot last, it cannot just end abruptly because the grounds for abrupt end is not there. Thirdly, Israel is not part of what is going on. So Israel may exacerbate the situation. So I can't see it ending before the 6 weeks, and it may go even beyond the 6 weeks. What is worrying America now is they do not know what Iran has. They thought just cutting off the head in Iran, that is obliterating the top echelon of governance, will create a situation where the Iranians will go on a demonstration and there will be chaos. And that's what America was expecting. They were expecting some chaos, which is their cup in tea anyway. The point is that from 1952, that's what they want from Iran. 52, they attempted to overthrow the Shah. They couldn't succeed. And 57, they did, thinking that they would just have a way and get somebody who would pay lip service to them. But unfortunately, 79, the Ayatollah came and things So for over 47 years, for over 60 years, let me call it, for over 60 years, Iran has learned their lessons. And they have what I call strategic patience. They build quietly. That they are able to get missiles that reach Haifa and Tel Aviv, and they still have more to send to other areas in the Gulf states. America is overwhelmed, bewildered. And that after taking out their tops, the system is still working structurally. This is a worrisome situation. So Trump does not know. If you ask Trump and his henchmen, what is the next step? They just don't know. They believe might will be right. But the Iranians have shown that steady patience, that is strategic patience, pays. And they have worked here. We don't know in the arsenals how many missiles are left. We do not know how many drones they still have left. And it's like all my colleagues, the analysts, we call each other, I mean, from Britain especially, they are wondering what the next surface will be.
Well, Mr. Vladimir Antwi-Danso, thank you so much for joining us this morning and having this conversation with us. Of course, we're sitting back and we're watching and hoping that, you know, Africa rise up and do what is needful. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, sir.
You are very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yes, indeed. Now, to our viewers, we've got one more segment coming up. Let's take that, and it'll be the end of the show. No, we're not happy it will be ending because we'll have to prepare for tomorrow's show. But let's take this break, and we'll be right back with our final segment.
Welcome back, and this is the last segment for Breakfast Extra Saturday edition. Now, in a significant movement at the United Nations, Ghana has led a historic resolution declaring the transatlantic slave trade as one of the gravest crimes against humanity. The move is more than symbolic. It is a renewed call to confront history with clarity and to push for justice that extends beyond acknowledgement into meaningful action. For many African nations, the legacy of slavery is not confined to the past. It continues to shape economic disparities, cultural identity, and global power structures. This resolution reopens long-standing conversations around reparations, accountability, and how the international community addresses historical injustice in practical terms.
So, to help us examine the implications, we are joined by Daniel Kipo Sunyezi, Associate Professor at the Legon Center for International Affairs and Diplomacy, University of Ghana. And also we have Samuel Adu-Gyamfi, Professor in the Department of History and also Political Science at Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Gentlemen, you are welcome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning.
Morning again. Mr. Gyamfi, I'd like to start with you. I'd like to know how significant this resolution, this shifting of global discourse on transatlantic slave trade is.
Is that to me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, it's very significant. If you look at where we have come to, we cannot continue to use cliches to describe the slave trade, which had commenced since the 15th century onward, climaxing in the 19th century, thereabout. I think that by the closure of same within the British territories and empire, imperial regions by 1833, it had become equally relevant that people of conscience would begin to appreciate the need to engage in legitimate trade and not the trade in humans. But in our contemporary sense, what we have realized is that the vestiges of slavery and slave trade seem to linger on. It is important that this UN resolution, among other things, serve as a basis to enable us to come to the drawing board or the table again to understand the grave injustices which we have witnessed as a people across the continent of Africa. Right.
Right. Now, Daniel, beyond, symbolism, what practical outcomes can realistically emerge from this declaration happening now?
A lot of practical implications of the United Nations resolution. One of them is that the world has, on this very month, 25th agreed or accepted that there were injustices that were meted out to in the past on slavery. And that resolution being backed by the United Nations General Assembly is very important. And that is a step in accepting and admitting the wrongs of the past. And it also formed the basis that all these injustices that has been carried out about 400 years ago, there's the need for the world through the multilateral platform, the United Nations, that the wrongs should be amended. And that could also give way for another aspect of this resolution, the return of all looted artifacts, the returns of other very precious things that were taken from the Africa and all these things. There's the need for that. And I think in the last part of it, it is a very important one that is aimed at to addressing some of the inequalities in the global system, whether in the economic side, whether in the political space. These are things that were of the past, and the need for us to break away from it. So certainly there are a lot more for us to gain from this particular resolution, and the future looks bright, and we need to continue to join hands in seeking that justice be found for Africa and people of Africans. So it's very significant.
Well, thank you very much, Daniel. Is this justice or is it reparation? I'd like to come to Professor Adu-Gyamfi here. Let's take a look at it this way. It would seem, and this is an argument that is out there, that the UN is proposing or is giving this opportunity to Africa to say, oh, we are, well, sorry for what's happened in the past, but only at a time when the world is actually focused on Africa for much more than what, well, is on the surface that it can offer. There's so much. So it's likened to saying, oh, sorry, we're sorry about the past, but can we have your minerals? I don't know if anybody's thinking along this line, that it's making Africa more accessible to the outside world by, well, providing succor to some of the wrongs that it had been meted out from before. Professor Adu-Gyamfi, do you think that this might be a case?
No, I think fundamentally, maybe we stand to be corrected because the world has always been interested. The so-called global north, the Americas and the others in Europe have always been interested in Africa. They've been interested in Africa's brain and brawn. That is why we saw this slave trade happen. They've been interested in taking Africa's mineral resources. In fact, they had fears. If you look at the Netherlands and the Portuguese and the others, they had fears that, for example, if Africans, Great Britain, for example, had fears that if Africans were allowed to continue to grow cotton, then if they kept on doing same, the triangular trade would not be successful. Why? Because if we produce what they pick from the New World, then how would they be able to continue to make gains across this triangle? So it has subsisted over time, where even back to legitimate trade across the Atlantic, there was imbalance of trade. We saw that through effective occupation and a completion of the deal using cannon fire to usurp territories in Africa. And for that matter, continue to exploit Africa's resources, shifting our attention from food crops to industrial crops in the latter period to also service the European industrial complex by the turn of the 20th century in the strongest sense. We know that by the 19th century onward, they were making great gains on that leverage. But today we sit and there are unequal trade agreements, right? As you can see, the European Union continue to exploit the continent, right? The so-called global north in the globalized scheme continue to take advantage of the continent. There are questions about how the African trade agreements, right, and protocols, right, the sub-regional protocols in West Africa within ECOWAS, what we have in the Southern Bloc, what we have in the Eastern Bloc, among other things, how they come together to form something meaningful. We, yes, of course, have made some great stride, but the great stride we have made, even as Ghanaians and Africans, where it has just not come about only today. We have had Kofi Annan serving on the UN and other great Africans making a contribution and having a say on the universal level. However, These must translate into economic gains. But these economic gains will not come about by holding our cup in hand, going back to Europe and the Americas to ask for handouts. Dambisa Moyo, not too long ago, wrote a book, Dead Aid, right? Africa has received aid from the West. But even that aid, I dare say, that possibly comes from the long queues we see at the American embassies and the UK embassies and elsewhere. It comes about as a result of our own resources and money taken from us through unequal trade. However, when these aid are given to us, how have we been able to actualize it in the sense that it has trickled into development for the African state?
Right.
There are critical questions for us to reflect on, and I think that we must do our homework well. Not too long ago, we were told that there's peer review mechanisms among African leaders, where African leaders are successful at that also. So there are critical pointers to that, but our victory today must be celebrated. It must be celebrated because our conscience is seared as humanity. And we must come to the basis of the fact that we were given little opportunity because our territories were ransacked, totally became a sphere for slave raiding and disrupted greater economic gains.
Right,
the pride of Africa was taken away.
Right. So Professor, now still on this, if we know what it means to us as Africans here in Africa, what does it mean to Black Americans or to the blacks in Europe or other places where they were extracted to? What does it mean for them at all?
It is very significant. Not too long ago, the former president of Ghana did the Return, a program that sought to bring Africans in the diaspora back home, and back home through Ghana as a gateway. This resolution should not just become an icing on the existing cake. It should rather allow Africans in the diaspora come back to African Renaissance, African intellectualism, African technological push, African economic push, and all that. It should be to them the need to have a new telepathy and a synergy around African consciousness and Pan-Africanism. It should bring us to the table to understand that Africans both at home and in the diaspora have suffered same or similar tragedies, and it's our shared heritage. Africa at the Guinea coast, right, suffered brutally, and our ancestral heritage, right, must be brought together. We must see ourselves as a united front, not against the West, but rather to work together with the West to be able to actualize and claim back what belongs to us. And by that, I do not mean reparation, because I think if we dare continue on that trajectory, reparation in the sense of fiscals, in terms of money, to whom will such money be paid to? But as my brother, Professor, talked about, clearly there is a need to have return of looted goods. You remember the 1874 sack of Kumasi, where stolen items were sent to Great Britain. The Asante pushed for that and also said it to the second, and they have borrowed it to us because of UK's own legal or constitutional arrangements that bars them from giving it back to us. These are some of the issues we need to talk about. Right. What we can take back. So Black Africans in the diaspora must be interested in such negotiations. They should be interested in having a Black economy, both in the diaspora and in the African regions.
Right. So, Daniel, back to you. Let's talk about the reparations globally. Do you think this resolution will influence, the conversation about the debate around reparation globally? Of course, we've seen the how do I put it now? We've seen the result where people are for, people are against, and people are still not decided where they belong. So, do you think this resolution will influence the ongoing debate around reparation globally?
All right. I thank you very much. Yes, the issue of reparation will always be a very thorny issue and a very divisive one. And I'm sure maybe that probably reflected in the voting pattern at the UN, at the General Assembly, where we have seen that the Western Canada, Australia, and UK, and the European Union, a bloc of 27, all of them abstain. And that is it's a signal. And I'm sure issue of reparation could be one of the reasons for they taking that position. And it was very consistent. They maintained that position. And if you look at most of the countries to the global south, Asia, Latin America, the Caribbean community, and Africa, voted yes, because it could also be that these are the area who suffer. They are victims of that slave trade. So that is a thorny issue. And I believe that going forward, the emphasis should not be on that reparation per se, but it takes various forms. You see, for these countries admitting, yes, we actually did something very, very bad on human trade, and we apologize. The Danish will say so, the Swedish, the British, the French, the Portuguese, admitting and apologizing of the wrongs. They are all part of that reparatory justice. That is the first part. So the monetary, as I said, is a very key issue that will be met with resistance. So I think we can look at the other components of it before getting into the monetary aspect. Even admitting that there were wrongs, putting measures that such wrongs will not be repeated is very significant. And that is the aspect we could move to. And having an agreement that we should also be interested to look at what the world must admit that human trade, this particular thing should never be repeated anyway. And that is also another victory. And that is also a very part of the reparatory move. And the global north making effort to reconcile with the global south. Yes, we were in a very advantageous position, and this is what we did against you. There's the need for us to make a genuine reconciliation, come together and see what we can do. And that is also a very important part of the repatriatory justice that we are seeking for. And I say that the monetary should be the last item that we'll look at. When it comes to compensation, I'm sure that the formula that will be applied and whatever is also a different thing. But I'm looking at the non-monetary aspect as very crucial, and that should be the first point. Admitting of wrong and apologizing, and the world coming together to make sure that this injustice will not repeat in the world history. And I think that should be the soft power aspect. The soft aspect of it should be tackled first while we get into the most contextual, most debatable, and most difficult aspect of the monetary.
So Daniel, many would argue that compensation is first on your mind, that reparation is absolutely important. But let's not talk about that. Let's ask the simple question to all of Africa. What now? We've had this announcement. It's been taken in. What does Africa do now as a united front, and who should champion this union?
Yes, I think if you look at the move, even though Ghana took the lead, led by His Excellency John Mahama, it was not a lone ranger. African Union, a continental body of 54, came together, and they all backed it, adopted it. And after Africa has adopted it, the next regional body that adopted was the Caribbean community. They gave their full support to it. And once this thing has been done, I think we need the same united front of people, Africa, and people of African descent come together and move it forward. Once it has been passed, the same effort that has been used, we expect the African Union and the Caribbean and our brothers and sisters in the Latin America who strongly push for this. We need to get all these regional bodies together, and then we present a united form. Even if we're going to compensation, it must be presented in a very united form. Who will benefit? Where will it go? All these formulas must be well streamlined so that the world will know that the global south, people of African descent are united. And this is exactly what they are looking for. And that will be the way forward. Once they're united and getting this resolution passed, we should be united in moving to the next aspect of hereditary justice. We need a divided front. We need a very united front against a divided front. As soon as we get divided, then we'll lose it. And I believe that the way we have pushed it, a united front is feasible. A united front is already there. We need to go in the same manner and get what we want from the global.
Okay. Professor Samuel, I think my last question will be, we've gotten to this point, of course, we've seen the transatlantic slave trade, and now we're asking, but this is more like a moral conversation than a law. How do you think Africans should prepare themselves to be sure that even if they apologize and, policies are being made, that there are no back-end, how do I put it, indices that there will be trouble, or it feels like Africa always have to pay for something. So how do we prepare ourselves to be sure that this time around, what we're getting is what we deserve?
I think it's a very difficult question. I do not know whether we'll get what we deserve in the right sense of the word, but it is good that there is the rising chorus of mea culpa, admission of guilt, that Africans themselves were also partly a party to the slavery and slave trade. We have drawn distinctions between indigenous slavery and chattel slavery. However, the plundering of the state has continued. It has continued with corrupt African leaders who stole Africans' resources in the sense of capital and stored it in European or Western banks. This plundering subsisted within the 1960s throughout coming to the 1990s. Also, if you like, interspersed with coup d'etats and counter-coup making. The continent became a turf for disruption even beyond slavery in the 20th century. I think that we need to exercise discipline, the discipline of offering the continent the right kind of leadership. At the AU front, it need not be roundtable talks and resolutions per se. There are protocols, there are agreements that are on paper, and such synergies must be dusted from the, if you like, from the shelves, and they should be put into effect. State actors must allow for such arrangements to trickle down to institutions of learning like mine, KNUST and Legon, or any of the universities in Nigeria and elsewhere, to be able to translate, continental policies, national policies, into research that are, if you like, actionable research that could serve the purpose of, if you like, policy and not policy per se, but also continue to serve the purpose of advocacy and the purpose of development in the area of agriculture, agribusiness, agric engineering, in the area of social policies and all that, human rights and all. Yes, so we are at this.
I think we're having a situation here, but thank you, Professor Samuel Adu-Jamfi and Professor Daniel Kipusinyezi for joining us and having this conversation. Of course, this is still developing, and we'll keep following up and see how well this situation turns out. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And this is how we come to the end of Saturday's edition of Breakfast Extra. It's been quite fast and quick. Maybe because you made a return. Welcome back, by the way.
Thank you, Buzz.
So do join us tomorrow because it's going to be Sunday edition and we have lots of topics to talk about then. And of course, what else do they need to know before then?
Well, buckle up. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.